What do you mean Ryan will be CEO? I'm the one who saved this hotel. My voice echoed through the newly renovated lobby, bouncing off the modern mountain-inspired decor I'd spent months perfecting. Mom's dismissive wave felt like a slap in the face. Claire, honey, your brother has more natural leadership ability. You're too detail-oriented, she said, as if explaining something to a child. That's when Ryan strolled in, hands in his pockets, wearing that smug smile I'd seen since we were kids. Hey sis, don't take it personally. Someone needs to handle the day-to-day stuff while I focus on the bigger picture. My name is Claire Anderson, and at 52, I never thought I'd find myself fighting for recognition in my own family's business. After 20 successful years in hotel management in Chicago, I'd given up everything to come home to Colorado and save our struggling family hotel. The irony? I was the only one with actual hospitality experience, while my younger brother Ryan had bounced between jobs, never holding one for more than a year. Here's what really gets me. 8 months ago, my dad called me in tears, saying they were weeks away from bankruptcy. I didn't hesitate. I sold my condo in Chicago, cashed in my savings, and came home to help. The hotel was stuck in a time warp, dated decor, no social media presence, and reviews that made me cringe. I worked day and night, modernizing everything from the reservation system to the lobby furniture. God knows how many nights I spent hunched over spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers and training staff. I even used my industry connections to get us featured in travel magazines. And it worked. The transformation was incredible. The Mountain Pine Lodge went from a 2-star nightmare to the talk of the town. Our bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, we were actually turning a profit. Every detail, from the locally sourced artwork to the upgraded amenities, was carefully chosen to create an unforgettable guest experience. But standing here now, watching Ryan smirk while our parents hand him everything I've built, I realize none of that matters to them. The worst part? They're announcing his promotion at tonight's staff meeting, the same meeting where I was supposed to present our record-breaking quarterly results. I can feel the eyes of our employees on me, especially Sarah, our head housekeeper who's been here for 20 years. They all know who really turned this place around, but like me, they're forced to stand here and watch this farce play out, pretending this is somehow normal or fair. Let me take you back a bit to understand how we got here. The Mountain Pine Lodge has been in our family since my grandparents built it in 1971. I basically grew up in these halls, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. While other kids played house, I was helping Mom with check-ins and watching Dad handle maintenance issues. The hotel was my second home, and I loved every minute of it. But Ryan? He was different. 3 years younger than me, he never showed any interest in the family business. While I was studying hospitality management in college, he was bouncing between majors, first architecture, then business, finally dropping out altogether to find himself. Mom and Dad never seemed bothered by this. He's just creative, they'd say. He needs time to figure things out. Meanwhile, I was building my career in Chicago, working my way up from front desk manager to regional director for a major hotel chain. Every success I had was met with lukewarm congratulations from my family. That's nice, dear, but when are you coming home? When are you getting married? It was never enough. When Dad called about the hotel's financial troubles, I knew exactly what needed to be done. The place was hemorrhaging money. Outdated systems, inefficient processes, no real marketing strategy. The reviews online were brutal. Stuck in the past, needs major updating, not worth the price. It broke my heart to see my family's legacy crumbling. I took a leave of absence from my job in Chicago, which eventually became a resignation, and dove into the rescue mission. The first month was just damage control, fixing broken equipment, updating the booking system, training staff on basic customer service. I dipped into my savings to replace the ancient carpeting and give the lobby a facelift. Every penny I spent was carefully calculated to maximize return on investment. What really gets me is that Ryan wasn't even here during all this. He was off in Denver, supposedly networking but really just partying with his friends. He'd show up occasionally for family dinners, make a few vague suggestions about modernizing our approach, and disappear again. Yet somehow, in my parents' eyes, his occasional input was just as valuable as my daily grind. I kept telling myself it would be worth it. That once they saw the results, the improved ratings, the increased bookings, the positive reviews, they'd finally recognize my value. I guess I should have known better. The past 3 weeks have been a nightmare. Ryan struts around like he owns the place, making changes left and right without any understanding of how a hotel actually works. Just yesterday, he decided to cut our continental breakfast service to save money, apparently oblivious to the fact that our breakfast ratings are one of our biggest selling points. When I tried to show him the guest satisfaction data, he just laughed and said, "Numbers aren't everything, sis." But what really pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked in to find him firing Maria, our head of housekeeping, who's been with us for 15 years. His reason? She wasn't flexible enough about his new scheduling system, a system that would have left us dangerously understaffed during peak checkout times. I managed to intervene and save her job, but the look of humiliation on her face will haunt me for a long time. I tried talking to Mom and Dad about it. I brought spreadsheets showing our progress, guest reviews praising our recent improvements, even financial projections for the next quarter. Dad just stared at his coffee while Mom patted my hand and said, "Dear, you need to give your brother time to find his footing. He has such wonderful ideas." That's when I saw it, the for sale sign on the old Riverside Lodge while driving home. It was our main competitor for years before falling into disrepair last season. I pulled into the parking lot, my mind racing. The property had so much potential, better views than our hotel, closer to the ski slopes, and a much larger spa space. Sure, it needed work, but I knew exactly what to do with it. I sat in my car for almost an hour, looking at that sign and thinking about every time my parents had overlooked me in favor of Ryan. Every achievement dismissed, every suggestion second-guessed, every contribution minimized. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it finally clicked into place. I called my realtor right there in the parking lot. The owners were eager to sell, and thanks to my savings and stellar credit rating, I could make it happen. By the time I drove home, I had already scheduled a viewing for the next morning. For the first time in months, I felt energized, excited even. I wouldn't have to watch Ryan destroy everything I'd built. Instead, I would build something new, something that was completely mine. Let them see what they gave up when they chose him over me. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I poured everything into transforming the Riverside Lodge into something extraordinary. While Ryan was busy throwing parties at Mountain Pine Lodge, I was working with contractors, redesigning spaces, and building a team of top-tier hospitality professionals. I named it The Summit, maybe a bit on the nose, but I wanted everyone to know exactly what I was aiming for. Word got around town quickly. Some people called me spiteful for competing with my own family. Others, especially those who'd worked with me at Mountain Pine, quietly cheered me on. My parents tried guilt-tripping me at first. "How could you do this to your brother? To us?" Mom would ask during our increasingly rare family dinners. I just smiled and changed the subject. Meanwhile, Ryan's mismanagement was taking its toll on Mountain Pine Lodge. Their reviews started dropping. Complaints about inconsistent service, maintenance issues, even cleanliness problems. 3 longtime staff members quit within the first month of his leadership. I heard through the grapevine that they'd had to slash their rates just to maintain occupancy. The Summit's grand opening was exactly 6 months after that fateful day in the lobby. I'll never forget my family's faces when they walked in. Mom's tight smile barely hiding her shock, Dad's wide eyes taking in the packed house, and Ryan's barely concealed anger. The local paper was there, taking photos and interviewing guests about Aspen's newest luxury destination. "You're trying to destroy us," Ryan hissed when he cornered me by the bar. "This is a direct attack on our family." I just smiled and replied, "No, Ryan, this is me succeeding despite our family." The contrast between the two hotels couldn't have been more stark. While Mountain Pine Lodge struggled with basic maintenance, the Summit was making waves with its eco-friendly initiatives and luxury amenities. Every detail I'd dreamed of implementing at the family hotel, but had been shot down, was now a reality here. From the locally sourced restaurant menu to the state-of-the-art spa facilities, everything was exactly as I'd envisioned. But success brought its own challenges. Other hotels started copying our innovative booking system. Some folks in town, old friends of my parents, started whispering about how I was tearing the family apart. Even some of my loyal guests from Mountain Pine Lodge expressed guilt about choosing sides. The real challenges came rolling in as the summit gained momentum. My former vendors from Mountain Pine Lodge started getting pressure not to work with me. Mom had quite the social circle in town, and suddenly some longtime family friends stopped meeting me for our usual coffee dates. I even lost my spot on the local tourism board. Apparently, there was a conflict of interest. But I wasn't about to let small-town politics derail everything I'd built. When local vendors hesitated, I found better ones in Denver. When the tourism board dropped me, I focused on building direct relationships with ski tour operators. Every obstacle just pushed me to be more innovative, more determined. Then came the biggest test of all. Mom and Dad showed up at my office one morning, looking worried. The bank was threatening to call Mountain Pine's loans. Ryan's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to come back, not as CEO, of course, but to help Ryan learn the ropes. "We're family," Mom pleaded. "You can't just let the hotel fail." I looked at them both, sitting across from my desk in the office I'd built myself, and felt strangely calm. "I offered to help 8 months ago," I replied. "You chose Ryan. Now you have to live with that choice." Dad tried a different approach. "Think about your grandfather's legacy," he said quietly. "This hotel has been in our family for generations." "And I tried to preserve that legacy," I shot back. "You're the ones who handed it to someone who treats it like his personal playground." The whispers around town got nastier after that. I was the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister, the woman who'd turn against her own family out of spite. Some days those rumors hurt more than I'd like to admit. But every morning I'd walk into the summit's lobby, see my vision come to life, and know I'd made the right choice. My team became my new family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who'd jumped ship, tired of Ryan's chaotic management style. They understood what I was building here wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something meaningful, something we could all be proud of. The breaking point came during the annual Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards. The summit was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel, and Mountain Pine Lodge was conspicuously absent from any category. I was sitting in the ballroom surrounded by my team when they announced our win. As I walked to the stage, I caught sight of my parents in the back of the room. They'd shown up unannounced, probably expecting to support our family hotel as they had for years. The look on their faces said everything. Mom was fighting back tears, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. Ryan wasn't there. He'd stopped attending industry events months ago, claiming they were just popularity contests. But everyone in that room knew what this moment meant. The student had officially surpassed the teacher. The detail-oriented daughter had built something better than the family legacy they'd refused to entrust her with. During my acceptance speech, I thanked my team, our guests, and even mentioned Mountain Pine Lodge, where I first fell in love with hospitality. The crowd's uncomfortable shifting told me they caught my subtle dig. But it was the conversation afterward that really changed everything. A renowned travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we talked about the summit's success, my parents hovered nearby, clearly listening. They heard every word as I described my journey, including how being passed over for CEO had motivated me to build something of my own. "Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated," I said, loud enough for them to hear. That evening, the magazine editor told me they were naming the summit Best Boutique Hotel in the Rockies in their upcoming issue. The same issue would feature a piece on traditional hotels struggling to adapt, with Mountain Pine Lodge as their prime example. When the article came out, it was like a bomb went off in our small town. Everyone who'd whispered about me being spiteful had to acknowledge the truth. I'd built something extraordinary, while Mountain Pine Lodge was failing not because of me, but because of their own poor decisions. Looking back on everything, it's hard not to feel a mix of emotions. Part of me still hurts from the way my parents treated me, how they brushed aside all I'd done as if it were nothing. But another part of me, maybe the bigger part, feels liberated. I'm living my life on my terms, not waiting for someone else's validation. When I walk into the summit every morning, I'm reminded of what I built with my own 2 hands. The vibrant lobby buzzes with life, guests chatting excitedly about their plans for the day, staff moving efficiently with warm smiles, the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the clean mountain air that drifts in when the doors open. It's everything I ever wanted the Mountain Pine Lodge to be, and seeing it thrive gives me a deep sense of pride. My team at the summit has become my family in ways I never expected. Many of them, like Sarah and Maria, are former employees of my parents' hotel who left because they saw the same lack of leadership I did. They've been instrumental in making the summit a success, and their loyalty humbles me. Sarah often jokes that she finally feels like her experience and ideas are valued, and I know exactly how she feels. Outside of work, I've started reconnecting with old friends. For years, I was so wrapped up in trying to prove myself to my parents that I let important relationships slip away. Now, I'm making time for coffee dates and hikes, rebuilding those connections. Some people from the town who initially criticized my decision to compete with my family have even come around, admitting they admire what I've accomplished. I've also started to find my place within the community again. Hosting events at the summit has helped me reestablish old bonds and even create new ones. Just last month, we held a fundraiser for the local animal shelter in our new event space, and it was a huge success. Seeing people come together for a good cause reminded me why I wanted to work in hospitality in the first place, to create spaces that bring people joy and comfort. But it's not all perfect. There are moments, especially on quiet evenings, when I think about my parents and Ryan. As much as they've hurt me, I wish things could be different. I've caught myself wondering if they've ever truly understood the sacrifices I made to save our family's legacy. Still, I've come to realize that their approval isn't something I need anymore. My success, my happiness, they're mine, and no one can take them away. For so long, I lived in the shadow of their expectations, but now I'm finally standing in my own light. It was about 3 weeks after the Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards when my parents finally reached out again. They asked me to come over for dinner. Just the 3 of us. I hesitated for a moment but decided to go. I wanted to hear what they had to say, even though I wasn't holding my breath for a real apology. When I arrived at the house, the atmosphere was different. My mom greeted me with a nervous smile, and my dad avoided eye contact, fiddling with his watch the way he always did when he was uncomfortable. Over dinner, they started with small talk, how the weather was unusually warm for the season, how they'd heard about the summit's latest 5-star review. I could tell they were building up to something. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and said, "Claire, we wanted to say we're proud of what you've accomplished." My mom quickly added, "We know we haven't always shown it, but we do recognize how much work you've put in. The summit it's remarkable." I wanted to feel happy about their words, but they landed flat. It felt like too little, too late, especially after years of being dismissed. Instead, I just nodded and waited for what I knew was coming next. Sure enough, my mom launched into it. "Ryan's been struggling. The hotel isn't doing well and he's in over his head. We were wondering if you could maybe guide him, help us get things back on track." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I let their words hang in the air while I looked at both of them, really looked at them. My mom with her carefully manicured nails gripping her wine glass a little too tightly, and my dad, who seemed to be studying the tablecloth as if it held the answers to all their problems. "I offered to help a year ago," I finally said, my voice calm but firm. "I gave up my life in Chicago to save Mountain Pine Lodge. You chose to put Ryan in charge, knowing he wasn't ready, knowing I had the experience to make it succeed. You didn't want my leadership then, and now that things have fallen apart, you're asking me to step in? I'm sorry, but I can't do that." My mom opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I'll give you advice if you want it. I can recommend strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff. but I'm not coming back to fix what Ryan has broken. That's not my responsibility anymore. They didn't know what to say. My dad finally muttered something about understanding my position, but the disappointment on his face was clear. My mom looked like she wanted to argue more, but for once she didn't push it. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Setting those boundaries wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't bending over backward to make my parents happy or cleaning up Ryan's messes. I was choosing myself, my happiness, and my future. Over the next few weeks, I noticed a shift in how I carried myself. Saying no to my parents gave me the confidence to enforce boundaries in other areas of my life, too. I stopped over-explaining my decisions to people, whether it was about work or personal choices. I became more comfortable letting go of relationships that no longer served me, instead focusing on the ones that brought me joy and support. At the summit, we hit new milestones. Our occupancy rates were the highest in the region, and we started receiving inquiries from other boutique hotel owners asking for consulting advice. My parents' hotel, meanwhile, continued to decline, though I did hear they finally hired a professional hospitality consultant to try to turn things around. Ryan and I barely spoke, and I was okay with that. He didn't apologize or acknowledge what had happened, but I no longer needed him to. His bitterness was his burden to carry, not mine. The summit had become a reflection of everything I'd worked for, my resilience, my vision, my independence. And as it flourished, so did I. Standing in the lobby of the summit one morning, I watched as the sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the modern decor I'd designed. A family walked past, laughing as they planned their day, while one of my staff expertly handed a couple their itinerary for a scenic snowshoe hike. It hit me in that moment how far I had come, not just professionally, but personally. For years, I'd measured my worth by my parents' approval, by their ability to see and acknowledge my contributions. But now I realized I didn't need that anymore. What I had built here wasn't just a hotel. It was a testament to my resilience, my creativity, and my ability to thrive despite the challenges thrown my way. The journey had been hard. Letting go of the hope that my family would change was painful, but it also freed me. I no longer felt tied to the weight of their expectations or their dismissal. Instead, I felt proud. Proud of what I had created. Proud of the team I'd cultivated, and proud of the life I was living. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The Regional Hospitality Awards ceremony was the kind of event I used to dream about attending. The room was buzzing with excitement, filled with industry leaders, journalists, and hotel owners from across the state. As the announcer began to list the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year, I caught a glimpse of my mom and dad seated toward the back of the room. Their faces were unreadable, but I could sense the weight of what this moment meant to all of us. When the summit was announced as the winner, the room erupted into applause. My team cheered as I walked to the stage, my heart pounding. As I accepted the award, I glanced at my parents. My dad gave me a small nod, and my mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, something I'd long since stopped expecting, but still appreciated in its own way. After the ceremony, I joined my team in celebrating. My parents didn't approach me, and I didn't go to them. This was my moment, and I wanted to share it with the people who had helped me achieve it. I felt truly free, free from the need for their approval, free from the shadows of their choices. Success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, deserving, and enough. And as I raised a glass with my team that night, I knew I'd finally found peace.